is Girish Bali, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics, another week. Today, we're going to talk to you about money. And money is one thing that we don't talk enough. But we do talk about money when we talk about bankruptcy. But why can't we talk about the creative way and the loving way and how to take care of money? So this person here, I spoke with her a couple of weeks back, maybe more than that, I'm not really sure when, but amazing gal, by the way. I'll tell you that. Her name is Jodie, and let's bring her into Back to Basics, and let's talk about money. Jodie, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's time to start talking about money openly. And when we do, coming from a financial perspective, I've been a broker for the last decade, almost 11 years now.
Yeah.
A lot of people are in very similar scenarios, and we hold these beliefs of, I don't have enough, or I'm not good because I don't have X. And it's really all this game within our mind and our mindset that really holds us back and holds us in this place of shame and anger and frustration. And once we start talking about it and seeing that other people are in the same scenarios, and that we stop connecting it to who we are as a human being at a soul level, we can finally move forward and start receiving more money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again for coming on the show and making this brighter for me. But before we talk about money, and before we talk about the details of money and why did I bring you in this show, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Back to basic. Really, what rings in my mind when you say back to basic is simple. Keep it simple, silly. that old phrase, just going back to the simplicity of things. When it comes to money, I find that we've complicated things so much, and we've done this with all areas of our life. Why? Maybe it's money, maybe it's to be smart or whatever it is. But the way that I teach and why I love what you're doing here is I come back to the basics so people have this foundational understanding of what's going on. I think that's so important.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jodie, for coming here. I had this episode back in February, and we talked about money and we talked about budgeting. But it seems like, is that enough to talk about, or should we just talk about more? That's the first question to you. What do you think?
Let's talk about all of it.
Let's talk about
all of it.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If my salary is $100, okay, do I spend 150, or do I manage my budgeting? Because obviously we live in paycheck to paycheck. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how do we get away from that paycheck to paycheck? Do we just pay off first and then enjoy later, or do we enjoy while paying something off?
I love the philosophy of both, and this is how I live my life. I think that we often restrict ourselves. We get in front of a financial advisor, or we make a new plan because it's a new year, and we're like, okay, I've got this new budget, it's squeaky clean, and it should work. And we don't leave room for our humanness. For our expression of life, for our desires, the things that bring life to our soul. We forget about that when we build a budget.
That's right.
So I like to say, to challenge yourself, how can you have both? I teach the energy behind money. I'm a financial advisor, but mostly teach the energy behind money. And when I see people that are living paycheck to paycheck, I want to challenge them, because most of the time we think that there isn't enough money. And I have seen countless examples on both sides of the board, whether this is in my brokerage business or my coaching business, where someone has looked back over the last 3 months, and what they thought they spent versus what they actually spent were very two different scenarios. So are you living paycheck to paycheck, or is that a mindset and a rut that you've fallen into? And then money needs direction. It's energy. It wants to flow. So it's going to flow whether you give it direction or not.
Yeah. It's really tough to get away from that paycheck to paycheck, right? Sometimes I have been told by many people that when they live paycheck to paycheck and they see all these sales going on in the world, you know, the
Mhm.
Thanksgiving and, you know, the Valentines and everything else, right? It seems like that they're overwhelmed that they have to spend money. So how do we make them believe that you don't need to spend? So it's basically we're saying need and want. What are your thoughts on
Mhm.
that?
I think that we get stuck in I can't have.
Hmm.
I can't have that, and I can't have that, and I can't have that. And we repeat this mantra over to ourselves over and over again. And we also connect having things to, again, who we are and our value as a human. So, I need to get a really nice Valentine's Day, present for my spouse, and it needs to be $100, or I need to get this because it's on sale. That's coming from a lack mentality or scarcity mentality. So I would ask more questions. Why do you want it? What do you think that it's going to bring to your life that you don't have right now? And is that absolutely true? And also, on the both side of things, is there a way that you could have it for less, maybe within your budget? A really quick story on that. One of my past students, she was telling me she saw a winter coat that she really wanted. It was fabulous. And she's like, this is what I teach in the Fluid Money Blueprint. She's like, I want that coat, but I don't want to pay $150 for it. I'd like to pay $35. Literally, I kid you not, she went back to the store a month later and they were having a special, and it was actually cheaper than she wanted to pay.
Wow. See, I mean, sometimes, yeah, it seems like that it's there in your face, but then it's okay to make that decision that, you know what, we can get that later. Is that right, or is that wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you know what, fashion will come, fashion will go, but at least your money's going to stay, and you can spend wisely. I think that's the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again for answering that question. So let me ask you this here. According to your bio, you keep on saying attractive money. Can you explain that to me, please, if you don't mind?
Attracting money into your life, having money come into your life, is more than just the accounting process of I make this and then I spend this and this is what's left over at the end of the day. We think it's very third dimensional.
Yeah.
But what's happening is we're co-creating and creating our reality right now in this moment based on what we believe to be true, what we're thinking about, and our energy or our frequency. So let me break that down. If you're thinking, I never catch a break, guess what's going to show up in your life? I never have enough money. Guess what's going to show up in your life? And if you're holding on the frequency side of things, which people, it's becoming more mainstream media to talk about the frequency, but people are very unsure of what that means. Well, if on a frequency level or an emotional level, you're constantly frustrated, or you're constantly ashamed or berating yourself for where you're at with money, that's actually sending a signal out to the universe to say, either bring me more of that, whatever it is that you're feeling. So more frustration, more anguish, more anger, all of those things. So all of that is contributing to the world that you see. Our brain is designed to look for the things that are important to us. So if you believe truly that, you never can catch a break and there's never enough money, that's what your brain is automatically going to go to over and over again. So it's shifting those belief systems, shifting the way that you see the world, and that frequency piece that changes everything for you.
Yeah, Jodie, thank you again for that. So let me ask you this here, right? When people, they have a whole bunch of credit card debt, loans, and everything else, right? Obviously, mortgage is one thing that, yes, you'll pay off whenever you pay off, which is in 30 years. So let's minus that out, okay?
Sure.
Let's minus out the car insurance, because that's going to happen every month, every 6 months, right? I'm talking about the actual loans, the credit cards and everything else, right? And Amazons and all the other loan stuff that we have. Do we pay off the balance first, or do we pay off the balance with the lowest interest first? What are your thought processes on that?
I'm actually going to give a completely different answer.
Okay, go ahead.
I would say if you carry multiple lines of debt, so let's say you have 2 or 3 different credit cards, a lot of people will pick the one that is the highest interest first, because that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay. But from a mindset perspective, when we're working along the, pace to get towards our goals, if we're not seeing any sort of movement, if we're not, checking any sort of boxes or like, yay, we got to this point, hitting those milestones, if we see nothing changing, we get discouraged and we get off the plan. So if you have a couple different items that you have in debt and you want to get all of them done, okay, what I would say is you can put a little bit towards each one. A little bit goes a long way, but also you could focus on the one that is the smallest, because you'll get that one done fast and now you only have 2, and you feel better about yourself because now you had, 6 months ago or 3 months ago, you had 3 credit cards and now you only have 2. Okay.
But the thing is that I'm living paycheck to paycheck. How can I pay that off? Because the balance is way higher than my actual limit basic monthly minimum payment. What are your thoughts on that?
There's always a way. I believe that there is always a way. We get stuck within the time frame. I need to do it by this date. I love calculators that show you how quickly you're going to pay something off. But there's a couple of things from a financial perspective that I would really look at. One, typically there's insurance on there that costs you more than your minimum payment. So look, do you want that insurance? Do you need that insurance? Is it effective? Is there somewhere you can find a more cost-effective option? And then when it comes to your overall budget, when you take a look at the last 3 months from a conscious perspective, you're actually looking at it not from a place of beating yourself up, but looking at a place of where did I direct my money over the last 3 months? And then choosing, I did this with myself actually. I looked at the last 3 months. This was about a year ago. I do this every year because things change. And I noticed that I was spending like $500, which doesn't sound like a lot, but $500 on eating out. Okay. $500, but it wasn't eating out to like nice places. It was McDonald's and a Canadian fan favorite, Tim Hortons. And I'm like, oh, that's gross. I don't like eating fast food, but why am I doing that? For me, the reason why I was eating out more often or eating out $500 every single month was because I was in a rush to get to the office. I'm my own boss. So I decided when I actually get to the office, but I had it in my head that I had to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning or else something bad would happen. This was my belief system coming in. So I would rush to the office. I wouldn't make my lunch. I wouldn't eat breakfast. I wouldn't do these things because I was in such a panic to get there, wherever I was going, to my office in this scenario. And then I would get to my office and I'd be working and I'd be in this flow and it'd be so amazing. And I would ignore my hunger cues. Okay. I would just ignore them. Oh, I'll go eat later. I'll go eat later. And I'd wait and wait and wait until I was starving. So there's a lot of different things going on in this scenario. I was starving myself. I wasn't taking time for me to even eat. So these are all negative things that I can change. But if I didn't want that money going towards McDonald's or Tim Hortons, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing, maybe it's just I want to, change it by $100, $400 going towards those places rather than $500, and then that extra 100 can go somewhere else. Once you see the numbers and you can consciously choose, do I want to continue to do this? Is it serving me and where I want to go, or no? And what else is possible? What else can I do with that money?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. Jodie, what are the top 3 questions that people really ask you? Obviously paying something off, but what are the 3 other main questions do they ask you that I'm in a rut, I cannot go anywhere? What are the 3 top things? What are your thoughts?
The first one that comes to my mind is, am I going to be okay? And again, there's always a way. we get so linear when it comes to our finances, but we can be more creative. There's creative ways that you can get things done, whether it's lumping together some debt that you have on a lower interest line of credit or into a home equity line of credit or something like that, that's going to free up some cash flow. There's always a way, and it's never too late. So that's kind of the number one thing that people ask me is it going to be okay? And that was the reason why I got into the industry, was just really to hold people's hands and help them adjust as they go through life, because we're constantly changing and life is constantly changing, like we've noticed over the past 2 years.
Sure. But Jodie, when they say that, am I going to be okay? Is that more of a depression that I'm going to be okay? Or
I think so. Well, I think maybe not depression, but anxiety of nobody, because we don't talk about money, nobody knows how much you're supposed to have saved at this point. And the number is not set. It's not a cookie cutter number for everybody. Everybody needs $1 million at 60. Well, it depends. You know, do you have other assets? Are you going to sell said assets? It's a conversation about who you are today, where you are today, and what you really want that future to look like. And then this dance to or maneuver in between now and then to kind of get you there.
Yeah. Thank you again, Jodie, for explaining that. You know, I was looking at your profile and you said, I found a vague tool. What is that vague tool that you use to help people?
Oh, in one of my webinars, I know exactly what you're talking about. I talk about my frustration with the law of attraction or the abundance coaches that are out there where they give vague tools like just be positive. And what people have done with this vague tool is I have to be 100% positive or I will attract negative into my life. Well, yes, being positive does help, absolutely. And you're human. You know, things happen in your everyday life that are going to take you off course. And what this mantra of you just have to be positive has done is forced people or encouraged people to shove their feelings down inside and try to ignore them and go about their life. But what happens is all of that stuff stays stuck. And if we're going back to frequency, okay, your frequency, your energy is speaking before you say a word. I think all of us have run into a salesperson at some point where we couldn't get away from them fast enough. You're like, I don't want to be near you. I ain't buying anything from you. You just feel gross, like you're going to take advantage of me in some way. You're not listening, whatever. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yes. That is their energy speaking before they've even said a word. So this is what happens to us, everybody, is that we try and shove these feelings down. They keep building and building and building and building. Eventually you lose your top or whatever, right? You have an explosion, but in between that time, that becomes the average from where you're creating. And that's not what you want to create. So you've effectively done the opposite of what you were trying to do versus actually feeling your feelings, taking a moment, taking a breath and acknowledging, I'm afraid right now, or I feel anxious about how much money I have in the bank right now. That's a huge one. I feel so anxious, I don't even want to look at my bank account. That is fear that is driving you. And you can see the negative patterns it will lead to. You stop looking at your bank account, then you start bouncing bills, and then you don't reach out when you need help from either your landlord or the bank or wherever, and talking and having these conversations about, how can somebody help you move through this, because we're so afraid to feel these feelings, but you don't need to be. You just feel them, allow them to move through you. They have great information for you to see. When I did it for myself, I had a panic attack looking at my bank account. And it wasn't even looking at my bank account, to be really honest with you, because my bank account wasn't even open. It was going to log in, and then I would have this fight or flight response. And then all of my actions from there on in were driven by scarcity. So once I could see that, I could go back to the trigger and say, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm not going to have any money or not enough money. Okay, well, how much is enough? We never quantify it. I need more, or I don't have enough. Well, how much more do you need? Here's $1. No, I need more than that. How much? What would make you feel better? What are you afraid that you're not going to have? And a lot of times what we do is we look at where we are right now, but we're thinking about the future, the next month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is. Oh my gosh, I have bills on the 15th. Well, the 15th is in 15 days from now. A lot can happen in between now and then, but we work ourselves up into this anxiety driven panic that we actually push all money away from us for the next 15 days to prove ourselves right. So coming back to that feeling, what am I afraid of? And is it really true? Is it absolute that this is the only possibility that could happen here? No, lots can happen.
Of course, of course. I mean, is there like a science to it that you can have, let's say, 5 bank accounts and you can start shooting out automatically to payments in different places and do saving at the same time? So then you don't see those money going away because it just keeps on rotating automatically like a reoccurrence. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. If you have the intention of this year, if you want to save more money, setting up something that is going to automatically withdraw from your bank account, super easy. I think every online banking institution has something where you can automatically put money away. And we're not talking about interest yet. But I think that that's good because you're not thinking about it. But I would be mindful of how much, because, the new year, we're like, yeah, we can do this. And, we forget about our needs or our desires or just us being human and things happen, giving ourselves a little bit of cushion. And then we make a budget that is next to impossible to keep. And then we set, those savings goals based on that next to impossible budget. And then we beat ourselves up for not being able to commit to that. So maybe start a little bit smaller than that, so it's not so uncomfortable. Maybe it's something that you don't even notice.
Sure. Jodie, so now we've talked about the crisis kind of, right? And we've talked about what the game plan is. Now, just very quickly, if you don't mind, we are saving money, but the bank actually has very little of interest. Do you have any ideas of how to save money and gain interest and get cash more back? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously there's, Roth IRAs and index and all that fun stuff. What are your thoughts? I mean, what should we do if we don't have 401k? If you have 401k, that's a separate story. You can always do something else too, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, the Canadian system is a little bit different than the United States, but they're relative. Everything is relative. Investing your money is important. And a lot of people don't understand that when you have your money sitting in an account and it's not gaining any interest, you're actually losing money. Problem is people don't see it that way. They see I have $100 in there today, and a month from now I have $100 in there at the same time. Maybe I have $100.01. But the problem is that what that $100, and we're seeing this rapidly expand right now in our world, what $100 bought you 3 months ago, maybe even less than that, is not what it buys you today. You go to the grocery store and inflation is running rampant. I think I saw a statistic, don't quote me on it, but that housing was up 25% in Canada.
Right. That's right. That's what I've heard. Yeah.
So technically you're going backwards. You're just not seeing it because you still see the same amount sitting there, but your buying power is being lost. So the way that you hedge that is you actually invest, whether it's in stocks or bonds or mutual funds or segregated funds. And the different types of accounts you choose will be dependent on what you need them for. We have something called the tax-free savings account. It's named the stupidest thing in the world because it's a savings account, but it's not a savings account. It's an investment account. They've just labeled it incorrectly. So you can invest in stocks inside of it, or bonds or mutual funds or whatever it is you want. But that one has no tax implication on the way out. So a lot of people think I want to go the direction of an RSP or an IRA or something like that. But then their money's locked in there and then they can't use it. And they were trying to use it for an emergency fund. And now they're pulling money out and they're being taxed on top of it. Yes, they got a tax deduction, but it doesn't feel good when it's coming out and you're not getting what you thought. Of course,
I totally understand that. Yeah, so Jodie, before I let you go, do you have any last words to my listeners and my viewers of what your thoughts are on the money. And the second of all, how was your trip on this Back to Basics so far? So go ahead.
I love it. My trip on Back to Basics has been amazing. This is a fun conversation. I just, it's nice to talk to someone else who is, building a community and just keeping things simple and giving content to individuals who are just really craving learning right now. So it's been awesome. If I could say anything to the world, to your audience, it would be to remember that billions of possibilities exist. We get stuck in what has been and what is when it's right in front of us. And if you continue to stay stuck, then it always will be. But that doesn't have to be your story. What happened in the past does not equal the future. You can create something vastly different than what you've experienced before, and have the life that you truly desire. You were meant to be here at this time, on this plane, to do wonderful and great things and to experience all of the joys that life has to offer. And money is just simply an exchange of energy. And when you whittle it down to that and you start exchanging more frequently with love and joy and passion, you start living your life from that stance, your life explodes with possibilities, with money, with abundance, with more joy, more love, more bliss.
Yeah. Jodie, thank you again for explaining that. But one last question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One last question is it okay to ask how much salary do you make?
I think the first question would be, is it okay if I ask you?
So there you go.
I think it's totally a personal thing. Some people are really don't want to talk about that stuff, but that's not a reflection on you. It's their personal preference. But I think when you're coming from a place of love and you're coming from a place of wanting to understand, maybe what this position is valued at, or that position is valued at, or whatever it is, the reason why you're asking that question, and that's a good question to ask yourself, why do you want to know? But asking from a place of love and curiosity, and just getting their permission to ask goes a long way.
Yeah. Thank you again, Jodie, for coming here and explaining to us that it's okay to go and ask and talk about money. And, obviously you have given us wealth of information and wealth of knowledge. And thank you again for coming here and, creating the small bubble that I have on my podcast for season 2. So thank you again for making this enjoyable for me. I mean, it seems like I've learned a lot today for sure. So thank you again, Jodie. And please do come back again if you have any more topics to cover on money. All about money.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jodie. So guys, we spoke with Jodie today and we talked about the basics of money. And money is one thing that we should always talk about. She did say towards the end of it that it's okay to ask people what their salary is. But then if they get a little, sensitive about it, keep that away. That's okay. You don't need to get into a fight. But there's one thing that she did also say, and I'm going to say it here too. Your money sitting in the savings account is not going anywhere, right? Dollar is a dollar, $100 is $100, right? But when you invest on other items, other places, other institutions, as she has advised us, okay, their interest does go up. Now play with it, find out from your financial advisor, or you can contact Jodie too. So guys, please be mindful when it comes to money. And it's okay to lose money, but it's the best when you gain it. So guys, as usual, as always, there's a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and hopefully Jodie will enjoy that. And the quote is, you must gain control over your money, or the lack of it will forever control you. So it's not that you, if they control you, it's like you need to control the money, okay? So please keep that in mind. So guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on commenting as much as you can in all my podcasts, because there's 3 things. This episode and every episode of mine is the key which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and I will see you next week. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Receiving that.
So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a word lingering out there on the internet called computer of vision. Is that a definition of that? So let me explain that, right? So you have big data, you have IoT devices, and then you have machine learning, which is your computer vision. So which is your IoT senses, right? Sensors, right? So is that where this kind of fits in?
I think based on that definition, because I'm not. This is the first time I've heard the terminology in the context, but based on that definition, yes, I think that's spot on.
Yeah. Thank you again for that. So now